Hi students, Cynthia Nitch here. Wanted to lecture on production planning and execution. So this is planning and this is process. So today we're just going to go over production planning and then we'll go over production process. So here's what we've done so far. We've done our procurement and we bought some trading goods. And then we've done fulfillment, which we sold some of our bikes. But this lecture is about production. All right, so here is kind of a nice little screenshot on what happens in production pertaining to the planning and the execution, and then finally closing the order. So it would be to process order creation and then go to procurement and see if we have enough raw materials, or if we need to buy more or new raw materials, do a batch determination, process order release of all the things that we need based on materials, and then prepare containers, weigh and dispense, like this is just distribution and this is inventory management. And then raw material consumption just means that we're in it, right? We're going to start doing our production order. And then we get an inventory adjustment, which means that we'll reduce raw material but increase finished goods. Work in progress, qualify inspections, order confirmations along the way, all the way through the process, and then goods movement, put it in storage, and then batch record, archiving, tracking, and process order close. All right, so that is the planning and the process or production kind of cycle here. So we start with production planning. Obviously, we kind of talked about this in the other slide, but we analyze demand, aka forecasting, and then we determine the capacity in our timelines. I don't want to go through this all because I go through it in another slide, so I won't bore you. Okay, production planning. Production planning is an administrative process that takes place within a manufacturing business. Kind of obvious, but it involves making sure the sufficient raw materials that we have them and we're able to use them. What are our staff, like our people that work for Work Center, and our CEO and our controller, and all those things, that all those people who are kind of involved in the production planning and other necessary items. All right, production planning, what we want to do is utilize resources effectively, for sure. We don't want a lot of waste. We want the flow of production steady, so it doesn't kind of stop and we have to wait a couple of weeks for a certain part to come in, or actually even maybe our machines that make some of the parts, make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing. We estimate production resources. Hopefully that will go smoothly. So some other things help to face competition, provides better work environment. All this planning is just pre-planning stuff, so hopefully it goes smoothly, or if it doesn't go smoothly, we can focus on one or two things that go wrong and not a bunch of things that go wrong. All right, so here's your production planning. We do forecasting, we do sales and operations planning, we do demand management in-house. What do we have? What do we have to buy? Then we do the scheduling of the manufacturing, and we do the planning of the manufacturing. And we'll talk about each one of these in the slides. Okay, so production plan and execution. I just kind of put like the players of the game based on this image here. And of course we have forecasting and sales and operations, and that comes in strategic planning. So it happens with the C-suite, right? But also marketing director and the line workers and supervisors. So we've got to get everybody's input on what we think we can do and accomplish in the production, basically. So, and then we have demand management, and we'll talk about that. And then the detail planning is, how do we schedule it, and then how do we plan it? And we'll talk about these two things: manufacturing execution, order settlement, and the procurement process. Like when we're planning, what do we need to buy? to get that done, and then how is the execution, the order settlement going to work, what's the timeline, and so forth. On the players of the game, I was curious, I figured you guys all knew or had some exposure to these types of people that are involved in the company, but I wasn't sure about this one, so I put it here. I said controller plans and monitors workflow as well as material movement in production cycles to ensure continuous operation. And they make about $112,000 a year. So, okay, so first thing, forecasting, right? So there's two things we do. We either make to stock or make to order. Make to stock sometimes are those small things that we can make and put in an inventory, or it could actually be we make, like, let's say we always make 300 bikes in stock on, every year. That's all we do. We don't do any like make to order, or we keep room for it. We do both, but we make sure we have enough to maybe fit two or three orders and just have a nice gap there, just in case we need to do a make to order production that might be really large, right? So you can do two, but most of these are the ones that we kind of forecast, and we know we sell about 300 a year, and that's been going on for the last 10 years, let's say. And so we do a make to stock, and then make to order production only occurs after the company receives a sale order. And this just might be like a brand new client that we got to, our sales team sold them on like 10 bikes or whatever, and then we got to make to order if we're low on stock and the usual inventory. Okay, so forecasting, matching supply and demand. It's never a perfect science, right? Because things happen politically, the weather, just a lot of maybe, a pandemic. So you could do the best you can with forecasting, but it's never right. So overstock and understocked warehouses result in the same thing, a loss in profit. We don't want a lot of stuff staying in our warehouse because it costs money, and plus it kind of tires out, right? That's the new and the best are always the ones that are doing like the current year. So if this is last year's stock, maybe new things have happened and we need to kind of keep up with that environment. But anyway, so overstock and understock, loss of profit. So your sales and operations planning, SOP, it involves kind of everybody, right? It involves the sales, how we're going to market it, what's manufacturing doing, can we produce X amount of bikes a year, a month, a week, and what's our accounting look like? Are we okay on the books? Are we under or overselling? Human resources, do we have enough people to actually help us manufacture and plan? And then purchasing, what do we need to buy to make this happen? So collection of data, forecasts, sales planning, capacity planning. Do we have the warehouse capacity? Do we have the human capacity? What are all the things that we need to make sure that this year goes well and goes smoothly? Okay, so demand management is an in-house thing. So when you think of marketing, it's demand management, but it's not that. It's demand management is basically required quantities and required dates for finished products. So when they go into demand management in-house, internally, they look at the sales plan, they look at the production plan, and so forth, so that they can make a great estimate on what needs to happen in production. So here's one of them, master production scheduling. So MPS drives the production process in terms of what is manufactured and what materials need to be procured. So that's a great way, that's a great plan, right, to keep things smooth and not over budget. It is the process that helps manufacturers plan which products and related quantities to produce during certain periods. And then your planning is basically used to ensure the availability of materials based on the needed generation of your scheduling. So what are the equipment tools you need to create that bike? Maybe some of them need to be replaced. And what materials do you need to create that bike? So MRP, the system calculates the net requirements while considering available warehouse stock and schedule receipts from purchasing and production. Sometimes MRP is faceless. They can actually tell your vendors that you use has a connection to what you buy, and they can tell when you're low on something, and it'll automatically just replenish. Okay, so MRP uses information from, so in our planning stage, we look at bill of material, like what did you buy to create the bike that we need, and all kinds of bill of material, and we'll get into that in a second. And then what does the schedule look like? Like how long does it take to actually make one of these bikes, and how much does it cost to do that? To calculate, so MRP uses information from these two to calculate the required materials when they will be needed during the manufacturing process. All right, so BOM is bill of materials. It's a list of items needed to create a product, as well as the instructions on how to assemble the product. So that's routing, right? And your BOM is just all the types of materials that you need to create the object that you want to sell. So BOM is it's all about the materials needed to produce a finished good or semi-finished good. BOMs range from very important to very complex. So to have a BOM for a ballpoint pen is about a half dozen materials, right? In contrast to a BOM of a Boeing 747 aircraft is 6 million materials. Can you imagine? Get that all right. But they do it every year, all year, right? So they know pretty much what the demand is of what our BOMs are. So the bill of materials looks like this. So you have single level and you have multi-level, and basically what you want on a single level is like a finished bike, and then these are all what is in a wheel assembly, how long will it take, the frame, the gear assembly, the seal kit, and so forth. So if we were actually doing the production case, we would actually be filling this stuff out. So off-road aluminum wheel, we need 2. Men's off-road frame, we need 1, and so on. And then what we do is we get this and we group it with all men's off-road bikes based on their colors and stuff. So, so that's what that looks like on SAP. Okay, so here's your routing. So BOM is the ingredients per se, and your routing is steps in the recipe. So we got what we need to build the bike. Now we just need to do our planning to make sure that we're using the time, or we're utilizing best time, right? So we're not wasting a bunch of time and paying a lot of workers to be there. So here's what a routing looks like. So your first routing would be a material staging. It should take about a half a minute, and it's at this work center. So they'll have different work centers. On this one, it just shows the same work center. So maybe these 4 things are done on one work center. But then you have the second thing you want to do is attach the seat, and that's 1 minute. And then the third thing you want to do is attach the handlebar, 2 minutes. And so you kind of get the idea, right? So this is the planning part of it. How long is it going to take? So then they can actually figure out how many bikes they can create in an hour or in a week. So routing is done when in your work center. So that makes sense, right? So this is routing, and each one of these is a work center, or it could be one big work center, and then all these have to be done in that one work center. So a work center defines the product routing as a list of operations. It specifies the sequence and decides the work center where they are to be performed. Some of it could be just, a bunch of little tools that you have to tinker with to get something built in the bike. And some of it's like robots, right? You've seen those videos of maybe Elon Musk Tesla Center, and they show all these automated robots doing everything. So those work centers could be pretty complex or simple. So on a work center, we work with what's the setup. The three basic time elements is setup time, processing time to build whatever we're building, and then tear down time. Sometimes those tear down times, like a work center, could be used for two totally different processes. And so so basically you're sharing a work center because they kind of use the same tools, but you have a different group of people actually creating the two different things in that one work center. Okay, so just like we talked about, involves configuring the work center and equipment, machine time, which involves the use of a machine for an operation, and tear down time is the workers return the merchandise to their original state, that is before setup. So that's your planning. So we got to plan on our SOP, we plan on our bill of materials, and we do our routing plan. We do demand management. So everything is kind of ready to go when we're done, when we're going to start production process, so we don't have any surprises. So same graph here, or same image here of it. In the production process, we request production, we get it authorized, and then we issue the raw materials to make the bike that we want. Then we produce that bike, and then we're done with that bike and it becomes a finished good. So there are a lot of orders here. We have a planned order, which is a formal request for production. And then we have to see what we need to do in production or procurement based on our demand management. And then finally, we get to do our production order. So this is kind of, if we were to do the case study, these are the things that we would have to do to make sure that we start with, raw materials and we end with a finished good. So we plan the order, production order. Goods issue is our raw materials going into production, so warehouse of raw materials, and we do a goods issue to production plant. And then they produce it, and then we confirm all the things along the way. Maybe there's like 25 steps that need to be confirmed, that we know that the bike is built the way it was designed. And then once we're done with that, we go ahead and ship the bikes out. Production order is completed, and then we review costs and settle costs. So like I said, planned orders, we would do in the actual case, we do it make to stock strategy instead of like made to order. And the production order, these are the things that are involved in that production order, right? We have bill of materials, routings, and work centers. And then we have our production resource tools. Like, what do we use to make the bike? What machines and tools do we need? And do those need to be replaced? Are they getting older? Do we have brand new ones? Do we need to train our workers on that? So a lot of things going on here, but then it's simple in a way. So this is what I was talking about, goods issue. We'll have raw materials in the warehouse, and then we just move it over to manufacturing. So a goods issue is the removal of materials out of the warehouse to production. In short, it means that issuing raw materials or semi-finished goods from the warehouse to production. So once we're in production, we do those work centers like I talked to you about. Here's what a work center could look like on creating bikes. And then confirmations. Confirmations are used to monitor and track the progression of an order through its production cycle. So when we talked about that controller at the very beginning, this is probably what he does. He probably makes sure that we're on schedule with quantities and what did we actually build, how many perfect bikes did we build, how much scrap did we waste, and did we have to rework something. The activity data, setup time, machine time, and dates, setup, processing, tear down, starting, and finish. And then personal data, employee who carried out the operation, the number of employees involved, and so forth. So once we've created the bike and all the confirmations have been confirmed, then we have a goods receipt. So after production has been completed and confirmed, the materials produced are placed in finished goods inventory, ready to ship out for fulfillment. So, and then we have completion. Once we do the goods receipt, then we know we're on the downhill, right? And then that there's a final step in the production process. It's called order completion. And this can be viewed from both a logistic perspective and an accounting perspective. So we're done building it and we're done paying for it. A production order is set to a technically complete status when it is no longer necessary or possible to continue with production. So, and that is it. And then this GBI case is, we don't do it in here just because I've done this case with students before, and they kind of, the MPS and the MRP planning and scheduling is lumped up in one step, and it just doesn't make sense because you don't really get to see what actually happens between those steps. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't do the case with you guys, because it just isn't that great of a case. But anyway, all right, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.